Hi, my name is Devin Moraine, and I am currently in my last semester of undergrad, and I am writing my honors English thesis on contemporary surreal queer cinema. I'm still working out the specifics of my argument and everything, but I've been watching some new movies and reading some new stuff to get my thoughts flowing. And one of the movies that I watched is The People's Joker from 2022, directed by Vera Drew. It's a parody film of the well-known Joker, but there's really nothing that I can compare it to. It has a very distinct style and voice, and here today, I would like to dive into Vera Drew's vision. The film is very much about Vera Drew's experience growing up as a transgender child who's unable to express herself. And her identification with the Joker mirrors her inner isolation that she has felt throughout her life. The film sort of exists in the Batman Joker universe, but in a warped way that changes what we know of those famous characters. The film follows Vera as she goes from identifying as a Joker to a Harlequin in this world where you are assigned a role of one of them. She leaves her small town and her hard relationship with her mom to pursue comedy, where she must choose how she identifies publicly. There is some commentary on the world of comedy and its entertainment and its exploitation, but also on big pharma and mental health institutions that reject transgender children. Drew made this film in 2022, 3 years after that one Joker movie that made Joker into a meme again. Joker, the character, has a lot of history that I admittedly know very little about, but I think that Drew's film pulls majority from the 2019 depiction of Joker. He was a known loner, unable to make friends, and who was known to be painfully unfunny. Joaquin Phoenix's role changed how people view that character himself, and Drew pulled from that loner persona to show how she feels she presents herself. Originally, Vera's co-writer, Brie LaRose, encouraged Drew to re-edit the 2019 Joker during the 2020 quarantine as a sort of joke. But while Drew worked, she started to reflect on her life and decided that it needed to be made into something bigger. She said, quote, "I knew I needed to do some sort of big creative project around gender, comedy, and mom issues." The film was entirely crowdsourced, which is crazy, and the intense mixture of animation and art throughout the film was actually made by over 100 artists that donated their work for Vera's film. The film premiered at Toronto International Film Festival, but the day after, a bunch of screenings were pulled due to rights issues. Eventually, almost 2 years later, the film was finally put on streaming services and released to the public. It started as a parody, just as a small project to pass the time during quarantine, but as more people got involved and more intention was put into the film, it became a sort of coming-of-age story. We follow Vera as she discovers her gender identity, meets a found family, feels understood for the first time, experiences an abusive relationship, and ultimately becomes comfortable to be herself in the world. It's incredibly surreal with a lot of mixed media, and it almost feels like an interview as Vera Drew talks directly to the camera about her experience. She talks to us about the movie in the movie, almost giving like a documentary feel. The use of mixed media and surrealness seems to be a way to show the internal chaos that one might feel when exploring their identity, and it shows their disconnect and detachment from reality. The chaos on the screen seems to mirror the internal struggle and chaos of trying to find yourself. There's a lot of messages that can be pulled from the movie, mainly of society's treatment of outsiders, of the lack of mental health support for transgender children, the lack of support in a family leading to interpersonal problems later in life, and how one's media intake can change how they view themselves and the world. I think the most interesting metaphor that I take from this film is the idea that being transgender in today's day and age is similar to the depiction of the Joker. It's the outsider who's never really been given an example of emotional connection, who has their own internal world that they struggle to see outside of. The comparison comes from the idea that being trans already places you outside of expected and accepted society. It forces the viewer to imagine themselves as Drew, to imagine themselves in this universe where you have to choose between Joker and Harlequin. It makes the viewer think about how they interact with and think about transgender people, and if they can relate to the film at all or feel empathetic. It makes you think about your own relationship with medication, your relationship with your family, and your ability to accept someone or yourself when they might not act as you expect. For some, it might force you to confront your internal biases and preconceptions, and for some, it might feel comforting and representative. For this film to come out in 2022, then later again in 2024, it is and was a really important time for transgender rights and exposure. There's a growing acceptance of gender nonconforming people, but at the same time, there is still a large group of people who will do anything to silence and disregard transgender voices. For Vera Drew to pull from that Joker imagery that people already love and make fun of, to then turn it into this heartfelt roller coaster of a story, allows the audience to reconsider their view of outsiders and to understand the feelings that transgender people might feel. It also pulls people in with their either love or hate of the Joker, the fascination of a new adaptation of the character, or anger of a different representation of that character. To pull from an already beloved character is like a gateway into the film. If you don't know trans people, you know the Joker, so you can engage. It's a sort of way to bring people together. Plus, Joker is always being made fun of, made into a meme and ostracized, similar to how trans people are treated in society. Personally, I am non-binary and I go by any pronouns, but clearly I present feminine and I'm not super vocal with that identity. I don't always tell people. This does give me a pretty different experience of the film, as it does limit me to truly understand the transgender experience, but at the same time, I do identify with a lot of the ideas that were presented. I might not be able to analyze and critique the film as a dysmorphic, transitioned person, which does limit that perception, but I am able to see it from the perspective of someone who feels different from others internally. This film humanizes Vera Drew and transgender people, and by proxy sort of humanizes the Joker. The reimagining of a known, ridiculed character into something heartfelt and understanding brings new perspective on either side. It challenges our comedy, who we make jokes about, how we think about these jokes, and how we think about representation. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Bye!